Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. We're back having a look at the BR changes for War Thunder, which are going to be coming in soon. These are the Naval arcade ones that we're going to be having a look at, basically because of the fact that that's the game mode that I play in Naval. I might be switching over to realistic pretty soon though, just because the Naval aiming changes in arcade are horrific, and I've just had a really poor time playing it of recently, basically grinding out the Japanese vehicle, the coastal vehicle, the good old Shisaka, was not very fun in arcade because everybody just has aimbot now and you can't do anything about it. So it's basically just like playing a script, which isn't really enjoyable. So as always, if you enjoy the content, make sure to subscribe and also like the video. Let's get through the changes. So a lot of these changes are decompression. And that shouldn't really be a surprise if you have a look, especially at the blue water side, which, you know, obviously they've kind of decompressed it all. I don't really play like higher tier battleships too much yet, but basically they expanded it from, I think it was like 7.0 or 7.3 to 8.7. So you have the Iowa at 8.7, you have the Bismarck at 8.3, you have the Soyuz at 8.7, you also have stuff like the Vanguard at 8.0, which shows how much worse this is compared to the others. But with this decompression, they also decompressed a lot of battle cruisers and a lot of battleships. So now, what they're doing with a lot of these changes is they are decompressing the kind of cruisers and also destroyer area of the blue water tree. The only one that isn't being decompressed is the Texas, and the Texas is actually going down in BR, so I'm guessing this one just isn't doing as good as some of the other vehicles that are around. So this one is basically going back to what it was before. So the way to look at this, right, is with decompression, what you do is you basically increase the BR range, so therefore vehicles can slot in better at BRs where they actually are more balanced. If you have less BR ranges, that means that you have more vehicles packed into a smaller area. Therefore, what you have is a bit of a problem, because it means that only the vehicles that are really good in that area will be played and everything will be forgotten about. When you decompress BRs, you can put vehicles at BRs where they fit a little bit better, and therefore there is more chance that they actually see play, and therefore you can get more stats about it, and then also just people can enjoy it more, because it's not really that fun playing non-meta vehicles in a BR that hasn't been decompressed in a while. Players of 9.0 to 10.0 Air, for example, can tell you this, you know, in spades. So the USS Texas is going down back to its original BR, showing that it probably shouldn't have been put up just because of the fact that everything else was being decompressed. They decided to decompress this, but I'm guessing it just didn't do very well. So that's why it's going down. Everything else, though, is just following the natural progression of decompression. So, for example, the vehicle that is going up 6.7 is the Ostfriesland, which is right here, the good old Helgoland class. So that's going up, not too surprising. And then all of the cruisers and stuff like that. Now, this is where it gets kind of dodgy. So, number one, the first change, I mean, we talked about beforehand. It's been really funny following the Mayoko and also the Haguro kind of stuff over the years, and also I suppose the tone. So the tone was the worst of the previous kind of 6.0s that were there, the Suzuya and also the Megami, which were 6.0s. So the tone kind of got left where it was. This is now going up, and so is the Haguro and also the Miyoko, and the Furutaka and the Ayoba are also going up. So basically, they are now decompressing this area. The Akoma is staying because it's awful, and it's basically just a tank. Like, it doesn't really do much damage. It just kind of floats around and doesn't really do too much if you've actually spaded it. And the Agano has always just been worse than these two vehicles. The Ayoba, if I remember, is slightly worse than the Furutaka, but it's like a very, very small amount, so it's like not a huge deal. The big change is the amount of crew, and also, if I remember, it's like the torpedo placement on them, where, you know, you have the torpedoes right here, and then the Furutaka, if I remember, is slightly different. But yeah, you can see like it's opened up, and also this means that it's just easier to use the torpedoes. They have like more arc on them, but overall, you know, there's not a huge difference. The Agano being at the same BR of these has always been hilarious, because the Agano is just functionally worse in every single way than the Furitaka and the Ayoba. It actually has even more kind of limited torpedoes when, the way that they're actually set up, like in this one right here. And also the guns are 15 centimeters, where the other ones are, I think they're 203s, or at least they're 20 centimeters. So yeah, they're 203 millimeters. And also you get more of them than you do over here. So it was just always weird in terms of like secondaries that these were like the same BR. So this being decompressed shows you why decompression is good, right? Because you have two vehicles here. They shouldn't be at the same BR, but they're at the same BR because the BRs were compressed, and that meant that they couldn't spread them out. So the Furitaka and Ayoba is going up, the Haguro and Miyoko is going up, and so is the tone. So basically the tone is going back to the BR that it was before, with the Megami and the Suzuya, and they finally realized that the Miyoko and also the Haguro should not be the same BR as the Furitaka and Ayoba, which is what used to happen, by the way, which is just crazy. So now the Miyoko and the Haguro, which are closer to the Megami in terms of their setup, are now actually going to be the same BRs as the Megami, which, to be honest, should have happened when the Miyoko came out. But for some reason, it just didn't. Like, it was always a step below the Megami, even though they have the same they have the same firepower. This one actually has like additional stuff on top of it in terms of secondary armaments, and also technically the Miyoko at the same time has more survivability because it has more crew and also a bit more armor. So it was just always ridiculous that these two was so much lower, and also the same BR as these. But they fixed that now, so that's all good. This shows why decompression is good, because now, after years of this area having weird and odd issues for Japan, they have finally found a way that it all works, and that's grand. Now, the tone, I still think will have a bit of an issue, mainly just because of the fact in arcade, like, all of the guns are on the front of the tone. It's actually a really interesting and unique design. I'm a big fan of it. But the problem is, it just means that you have like all of the ammo here, so this thing just gets ammo racked all the time. Everybody knows where to shoot it, and it's just kind of annoying. But it should still functionally be the same BR as these guys, just because of the amount of firepower it has compared. So yeah, it's just kind of how it is. So them decompressing this is really, really nice. For Britain, they're kind of doing the same thing. For Britain, they're kind of doing the same thing with some of the vehicles that maybe they kind of forgot about because they were over here on the tech tree. So you have the Liverpool, and then also you have the Tiger, which are both going up by a BR bracket. So basically what's happening is the Tiger is going to 6.0 and the Liverpool is going to 5.7. And this, in my opinion, if you're not going to decompress anything else here, doesn't make any sense. Basically, the Liverpool, if you don't know, is just a worse version of the Southampton. They decompress the Southampton, which is why it's at 6.0. But also at the same time, it still is not as good as some of these other vehicles, such as the London, and also the other ones like the Invincible, for example. Like the York is no good because it has no armor. The Kent and the Norfolk have the same issue. They also, at the same time, have the big armament, which makes them a heavy cruiser. But the York actually has less guns than these guys, which is why the decompression once again worked for this area. But it's just weird seeing how much they value these 6-inch guns over the 8-inch guns of the London. Obviously, the county classes in general do more damage with their guns, but the fire rate on the 6-inch guns really helps these guys out. But I just don't think the Liverpool is on the same level as something like a London, for example, or an Invincible. The Glorious is just a bit of a meme. Like, it doesn't really do anything. It's kind of like the Ioma. Like, we talked about it, or the Acoma, sorry. Like, we talked about it here. It just kind of exists. Like, it's every so often you get a funny kill, and it's hilarious. But I don't think this should really move, because its main reason why you take this is like a second or third spawn, and it's because of the fact it has like the secondary armament that works pretty well as an AA. because its main armament is worse than pretty much all the other vehicles that are around here. So them decompressing this alongside all of this, I don't really agree with, but I suppose it is a step below this, but I don't know if it's worse than something like this. So the HMS Tiger is also going up. I don't know what it is about the Tiger, but the Tiger always is a higher BR than it should be. And this is, it started off as a really interesting BR, and then they added kind of the rangefinder stuff to it, and it became a lot better because you could be really, really accurate compared to like everybody else. But the problem is nowadays, especially in arcade, it auto aims, so you don't have to worry about that. You don't have to think about it. And the Tiger has 2 sets of 6-inch guns. These are very modern turrets, and they have a crazy fire rate, as you can see here, 20 rounds per minute aced, so you can just hammer out the ammunition. But generally, at the same time, it also means that you don't have like a ton of firepower if you get targeted. If this thing is left alone, it will just annihilate any cruiser or any destroyer. It will tickle the battle cruisers and battleships, but everything else it will absolutely hammer if it's left alone. And that's kind of the problem with it. If you have a look at something like an Invincible, this thing is infinitely more tanky and can put out infinitely more damage than something like a Tiger against a battlecruiser or a battleship. But this now is going to be a lower BR than the Tiger, because the Tiger has the fire rate, and I'm guessing people are just using it to max their mission score by lobbing HE at people to be able to get, you know, more kind of RP in the place. I just don't really get why this thing is one which just keeps going up. I don't really see this as something which should be kind of a 6.0 vehicle. I don't think it really fits there. But then again, if the Southampton's a 6.0 vehicle, because once again, these vehicles with high fire rate just beat up on AI and also destroyers and cruisers, maybe that's what's kind of happening with this vehicle. Like maybe that's what's going on. The Italians, the decompression is hitting them too, with the Bolzano, the Eugenio di Savoia, and also we have the, I think it's the, there's a store, is it? No, it's the Genia, sorry. So all of the, this is a Fante class, but what it actually is it's a Fletcher. So basically all of the kind of like premium Fletchers and stuff, they're just going up to 4.7 alongside the standard Fletcher. So they kind of forgot about them existing. So you can have a look at these Astora, for example. This is another Fletcher, which was put out, you know, by Gaijin, because they're pretty standard, pretty bog standard vehicles. But all of the Fletchers are going up, and they're just following the fact that the actual Fletcher went up in BR. So they, as I said, they just kind of forgot about these ones. So kind of like the M60 change that they did. So good that they fixed that, right? But the other ones, the Bolzano and the Eugenio di Savoia, so these vehicles in the mid-tier, which are right here, they're all kind of in awkward places. So the Eugenio di Savoia, I spaded it and it was horrifically bad. Same with the Duca degli Abruzzi. These guys have 152mm, which fight very well against destroyers, but also don't do really anything against cruisers, and also just get beaten up by battlecruisers and battleships. These vehicles nowadays don't really have to fight those, so that makes it a little bit better. But it is kind of funny how they are putting up the Bolzano and not putting up the Trento. So the difference between the Bolzano and the Trento is a very small amount. You can see here that the Bolzano is at 5.3, so is the Trento. The Trento has way more crew than the Bolzano, which basically gives it more percentage, you know, well, health at the end of the day. The Bolzano has better secondaries, but that's really about it compared to the vehicles. It technically has better rounds, well, not better rounds, but if you compare the guns, so the Trento, it has a 2.6 round per minute fire rate, which can go up to 3.4 minutes, and then the Bolzano has the more modernized guns, and you can see here that it has a slightly better fire rate, but that's really the only difference between the vehicles. So the fact that these two are going to be at a different BR just is wild to me. Basically, the Bolzano has less survivability, slightly more firepower, whereas the Trento, more survivability, slightly less firepower. So, like, it's It's just weird how they're going at different BRs. And the Eugenio de Savoia, I mean, fair enough. This area doesn't really make a lot of sense once again for Italy. And as we've talked about before, like the Raimondo Contacoccoli and also this vehicle are pretty similar in terms of how they actually play in the game. You know, they both have basically the same main armament, whereas the Eugenio has like slightly more secondaries, which are worthless, and then it also has a bit more armor. So technically this thing should be at a different BR, but is it as good as the Duca degli Abruzzi, which is even a step up on top of that? That's like the question you got to ask yourself. Maybe this thing is just overperforming a little bit compared to this, so therefore they're going to push it up. Like that seems like reasonable. It's just one of those where, once again, more decompression would help this, but at the same time, since we've already had a big piece of decompression, that maybe this just suffices. Maybe this is just doing slightly too good at 5.3, so they need to try it at 5.7. The perfect setup here would be this is 5.3, this is 5.7, this is 6.0, right? If there was more decompression. And maybe that's eventually what happens. Other vehicles that are getting decompressed, Z47, Z46. So these are the prototype or the project destroyers for Germany that were never finished. These have really good fire rate, but they only fire HE. So once again, they're really, really good at kind of putting out damage and also getting mission score, but they're not actually that useful at really doing anything else. Putting these up will be fine. Like, they should have gone up a while ago. Once again, it's just standard decompression. They're better than these two by far. They're better than the Elbing. They're probably better than the Emden, if we're honest. So yeah, it just makes sense. Like, there's nothing really to say about that. The Kirch is also going up, which I believe is in this tech tree somewhere. I can't remember where it is, actually. There it is, the Kirch. So the Duca d'Aosta class Kirch. So I'm pretty sure there's more than one Kirch, isn't there? But yeah, this one's going up. Don't really have too much to say about it. It's basically very similar to the Eugenio de Savoia, so that's why it's going up. They're just mirroring the changes. So as you can see with like the blue water stuff, it's pretty much all decompressing like the areas. The only one which isn't is like the Tiger. The Tiger's just kind of weird on that front. And generally it's just fine because it's just following the standard progression of what they've done before. So they do decompression in ripples. So you have like your top tier decompression, and then the BR's lower than it, and then the BR's lower than that. And that's basically what they've done here. It's so you don't shock the system too much in a big way, and therefore kind of break everything and force, well, not force, but make people stop playing because they don't like the fact that everything's changed and they're fighting different enemies and all of this. So it's just a way of like doing it slowly. And they always do this with BR changes, whether it's naval, air, or ground, and it's worked for them. So that's kind of what they've done. So let's talk about the coastal stuff. They are putting up just a bunch of the monsters that have been monsters for a while, and you'll see basically like, you'll see a common trend with a lot of these vehicles. I think that's probably the way to put it. Basically, you have the M802, which has steel armor and 100% crew. You also have the Kern, which has steel armor and 238 crew. You also have the Lubeck, which has steel armor and 238 crew. You also have access to the Orla, which is right here. This is the Premium Peacock. It has steel armor and only 39 crew. And then also the Peacock, which has steel armor and 31 crew. So it's actually worse than the Orla, which is kind of funny. You then have the Ayanami, which is for Japan. This one is right. It has steel armor and 220 crew. And then you have the PR1124 early, which, if I remember, is one of these things here. Actually, I have no idea where it is. But yeah, you have the 1124 early. Oh, that one's a little bit earlier. So this one's like in here. There you go. It's this one. So this one has steel armor and crew. And then also you have the PC451, which I'm pretty sure is around here too somewhere, or it's in a different tech tree. So if you haven't noticed what I've been saying, there is a big problem with Coastal right now. And it is the fact that there are many machines that can do damage 2 other machines, and then there are machines that cannot do damage to the other ones. And that's because of the type of armor that they have to them. This is functionally made like PT boats, just completely worthless unless you're trying to capture zones. So for example, the Jaguar here, which used to be a very, very powerful vehicle, is made out of wood. It has a bit of steel, but not a lot, and it doesn't have a lot of crew. It relies on its mobility and its high firepower, but this thing just gets mincemeated by a lot of vehicles which have this steel armor and also a lot of crew. So you basically can't do anything against these guys. This is why stuff like the Fairmiles, for example, kept going down in BR, because they are wooden vehicles which have no survivability. They die within a few seconds. So there is a big problem in Coastal right now, where you have basically the haves and the have-nots. And since the player base is smaller than it needs to be, everybody's just playing the haves. So the have-nots just don't exist. So stuff like the Fairmile, for example, here, which dies within 2 seconds, has to face stuff like the Peacock, which you cannot kill. Or the Brave Borderer, which once again dies within 2 seconds. You face this every game and you can't do anything about it. By the way, they're swapping these 2 vehicles, which obviously, makes sense since this one's the higher BR than the other one. But yeah, so there's just a fundamental problem with Coastal, and it has been there for a long time. Pretty much all the vehicles that they're putting up, apart from the PC451 and the 122A, kind of exacerbate this issue. The PC451, I suppose it has the steel armor and the crew, so yeah, it does exactly the same. It's exactly the same problem. So all the things that have this set of armor are going up in BR. Wild. So yeah, as a person who's played like Coastal a lot, like you can see through a lot of my tech trees, I basically got to the point in most of them where I started running into all of these vehicles at like 4.0 or 3.7 or whatever they are, and I just kind of gave up because there are, for example, right? Let's have a look at this lineup. You have the Asheville, you have the PT-812, and you have the PT-810. The Asheville, its gun overheats, and also it has a reload attached, which is hilarious, and it dies within a few seconds because it doesn't have enough crew. The PT-812, the same issue happens. Then the PT-810, which is made out of wood, so it dies within 2 seconds. All of these face all of those vehicles that are on that chart, and they all just nuke them, and none of these can do any damage compared to any of those vehicles, which all have like 4-inch or 5-inch guns or 105s, which can one-shot you. They can just one-shot you. It's playing like Naval, especially in the arcade area right now. It is just insane that you are just at the whims of these guys playing just these meta machines. What's surprising to me is they didn't put up the Arras, and they didn't put up the Amiens, and they didn't put up the Marne, which basically all of these things do exactly the same as what they've done previously. They one-shot vehicles, and then also at the same time, it's very hard to kill them unless you're using torpedoes. And even with torpedoes, sometimes it just doesn't even work. So yeah, the Coastal is just nuked by the fact that they just added all these larger machines to them, and then also at the same time, they mix them in with like the early Blue Water fleet, which once again has the same problem. Like you can't do anything against these in torpedo machines unless the destroyers are not paying attention. And that is just not good. So the changes to Coastal are positive. It won't fix it like at all. Like Coastal's nuked. Like I don't know how else to put it. Like it's impossible to play vehicles which aren't the meta ones. And if you play the meta ones, it's super easy to play. Like there's no in between, and hopefully it gets fixed, but it's been like this for like years, which is why hardly anybody plays it. So all these changes are pretty positive. I like them, but will it solve the issues? Probably not. In Blue Water, it will, because once again, it's just following decompression. The Coastal stuff's just kind of sad. So we'll see what happens. Let me know what you think. And as always, I hope you have a wonderful day. I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank GMG Smiley, CD Beans, Chieftain Mike, EMN3 Galaxy, Tulio Pontecorvo, Brendan Quinn, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Wartinder, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Ozzy Panzer, Alan Hacker, Liam Shear, Opium Prime, Lafouche, Sem, Aslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R. for supporting the channel.